So I was looking earlier today at something to talk about, to talk on. I was thinking a little bit about Zen practice in general. There's something I always took as a little bit of a misread of Zen is how it's sometimes popularly portrayed in how people would take it who've never heard of it. Like Zen means you're meant to be kind of peaceful all of the time, or chill or calm, right? You can have that Zen demeanor, and that's something of a stereotype, and it's something that we don't really aim for or particularly promote in Zen, but it does have its roots in pointing to a peace of mind and an active alignment and active acceptance of present reality that is at home, being at home in oneself and being at peace. That's certainly there at the root of the practice. It's good to question with Dharma practice sometimes, to check in and ask, why are we doing this? Why am I doing this? That for me becomes very obvious when we sit together, when we have a period of meditation. If we had no talk or not a lot of words around it, it would be enough to gather and sit together. I think that is, or I know that is a powerful salve for the sense of disturbance that tends to gather in the body mind as we become perhaps burdened with complications and concerns. Then we have that 30 minutes, which if we really apply ourselves and use that time well, how we fill that 30 minutes, it can be a powerful salve and a strong investment in our equanimity and our and peace of mind. But it requires that essential shift where we have to practice it. It's not that really lands so much naturally in our lap. There is usually a practice required. A practice of concentration, if it's breath awareness, or a practice of direct experience in just sitting, or a practice of inquiry in Zen if we're involved in koan study. Right? So there is um, we arrange the body first, and then the mind follows along. We direct the mind to this present experience, and then setting aside our the dualistic lens through which we analyze our experience. We set that aside for a period of time. To do so invites the mind to really return to its natural stillness, where things are just as they are. And then we can emerge from sitting after 30 minutes and notice and realize that palpable shift where there's perhaps a sense of spaciousness or a sense of ease. We could say we cultivate that in meditation, but it might be more accurate to say that we return to that through the practice of meditation, not creating a state of mind, but returning to a natural state of mind, which tends to become covered up or obscured when we spend a lot of time in that dualistic me and the world with 100 and 1,001 complications and concerns. And if we can devote a regular time to the practice of still sitting, and have that gentle discipline where a certain amount of time per day is spent in cultivating presence, that then will penetrate and be revealed in everyday activity. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be noticed in a cognitive way. If you allow the body and mind to return to its base fundamental stillness and connection with its environment, that stillness and connection with the environment will be made real during everyday activity. And you become a person of presence, a person of present awareness. An ordinary state of mind, but an ordinary state of mind that proves often elusive for busy human beings in a chaotic world. Again, for the talk, I'm going to reach back into perhaps a long time ago, into Tang Dynasty China, like 1600 years or so ago. Seems like a very long time, but I just started an article earlier. I sort of bookmarked it to read it later. I had an article that says that the universe may not be 13 billion years old. It might actually be 26 billion years old. I haven't read the theory yet, but there's this, the James Webb Telescope discovered that galaxies are way more older and more complicated than they should be. So, we jump from 13 billion to 26 billion, then suddenly 1600 years ago doesn't seem far away. And certainly when we look at these stories from the times of China and India in Dharma practice, what a lot of the tradition is gleaned from, you find that it's human beings doing human things in the human world, right? That some things are a little different culturally, and the ways and means of living were a little different, but broadly there's still much more that is just the same and very relevant, completely relevant to our lives now. The teacher that I'm going to bring up the koan from is Master Zen teacher Joshu. That's the Japanese. His name wasn't Joshu. He had a Chinese name, which I'll spare you a hopeless pronunciation of. The Japanese is much easier for those of us whose English is the first language. And so we tend to use the Japanese names in our tradition. Joshu. He's one of the pivotal Zen teachers of history. Began very young, like many of the Zen teachers in the record. They began very young, usually often as children. It was a way to receive an education for many centuries in China and Japan, was to join a training monastery, either as a monk or as a nun. You'd be trained in Buddhist precepts and ethics, as well as like a more general education. So he joined as a young person, and it said that he had a pivotal experience of Zen realization when he was about 18 with his teacher Nansen, when he asked about ordinary mind. And that forms the basis for several koans too. There, his questions around what is ordinary mind. After a long career as a monastic, and after his teacher had passed away, he eventually decided to teach. The record says that he didn't leave to start teaching on his own until he was 80, which is but he was 80 years old when he decided, maybe I'm ready, maybe there's a couple of things I could share at this point. And that he established his own small temple, but he wasn't much of a maintenance person. Apparently it was very austere, his particular temple. A part of the roof caved in, and so it would rain and snow in the season in that part of the roof. And instead of fixing it, he just didn't sit in that corner. Apparently, it's just okay. Reality is telling me don't go over there. And teachers in those days, especially when they became elderly, would sit in a chair. I'm really appreciating the chair that I'm sitting in right now. It's one of those like fancier office chairs that have some kind of orthopedic support. And I'm like, this is nice, Joshua had a chair, But it said that when one of the legs broke of his chair, and he forbade that being fixed, and instead he took a piece of firewood and strapped it onto the chair with a piece of rope, tied a piece of firewood on there, and that was good enough. And so he used the chair like that. So again, not someone who was very content with things as they are, and not so interested in building or improving things. People are different, right? We're all very different. There's much that binds us, and of course we're very much the same too, but we have these differences, these quirks of personality and our likes and dislikes. This is a koan that you may have heard before. Okay, I've brought it up a few times, and it's quite a famous koan. It's seen as being quite an accessible Zen koan too. Might seem quite straightforward, but over the years, for myself, it opens up and has quite a lot of dimension to it. So I'm going to begin with the preface, which is taken as a pointer towards the main thrust of the main case. So the preface says, when food comes, fill your mouth. When sleep comes, close your eyes. When washing your face, you rub your nose. When taking off straw sandals, you touch your feet. At such times, if you miss the point, take a light and search hard in the depths of the night. How will you meet this? And the main case now. Attention, a monk asked Joshu, your student has just entered this monastery. Please, teacher, instruct me. Joshu said, did you finish your rice gruel? The monk replied, I have finished eating. Joshu remarked, then wash your bowls. Then wash your bowls. Joshu was known for having a wonderful command of language. He had very good expression. Zen and Dharma is very difficult to put into words, as we all well know. It's difficult to put into words. Joshu was remembered as being particularly adept at expression with words. Some people are very good with words, right? Remember the old saying in the UK, I don't know if it's a saying here in the United States, it'd be about somebody, maybe with a little bit of a derogatory edge to it. It would say like somebody had the gift of a gab, right? It's like somebody has like just being able to, right, make a good salesman, maybe, right? You'd be able to like just, have that kind of gift, able to speak well. Talk about salesman. As somebody who I trained with, who was studying with another teacher, and he'd been training a very long time, and he'd finished all of the formal studies, and he wondered, when am I going to be a teacher? And like his teacher had never brought it up, so he actually tried to bring it in from the side. He was training in Japan, and he said to his teacher, what's next? Do you want me to go on and teach? And he said his teacher said to him, why? Do you want to be a used car salesman of Zen? And he said he never asked him again after that. Because he just really slapped him with that. Like, you want to be a teacher, or you want to be a used car salesman for Zen? But, this is not to talk down Joshu. It said Joshu, like, with very natural speech, could elucidate aspects of the Dharma. And this Dharma is so the truth, the reality of our life. Joshu could point out aspects of our life, aspects of reality, just using natural everyday language. So he wouldn't be, using the word Dharma or Buddha, or emptiness or any of these particular words so much, but just using what's at hand. This is a good example of this. In the preface, it says, when food comes, fill the mouth. That's straightforward, right? You know, there's a very old Chinese saying from this period that talks about Zen as, what does it say? It says, carrying water and chopping wood. You know, that's like the activity of Zen. You can imagine in those days, you'd be carrying your water. It wouldn't just be coming out of the faucet. That's a, right? We're blessed in that way, but you carry water and you chop wood. So there's a naturalness to our lives. When you're hungry, you eat. It's another old Chinese saying, when hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. Same thing here. When food comes, fill the mouth. When sleep comes, close the eyes. Basically the same expression. Sounds very straightforward, but there's a very much a naturalness to that. Like often we run amiss of even that simple activity. You know, there's nights where we can't sleep. Everything, you know, it's time for bed. Everything's been done a certain way and we're ready to go. And then you have those nights where you lie there and it's like, oh, it's not happening. You know, it's like, I can't get to sleep. When washing your face, rub your nose. That might be just kind of a translation. I don't know. I don't pay particular attention to my nose when I wash my face. I don't, maybe it may, you know, maybe that kind of varies, right? But you make a good job of it. And when taking off straw sandals, you touch your feet. This is a little difference from that 1600 years ago, you know. Maybe now we don't have straw sandals. Or actually, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, maybe if you got a Lululemon, they're selling some $200 straw sandals. If they're not in yet, they're probably coming, you know, straw sandals. It's going to be the ultimate in like kind of organic, sustainable kind of sandal wear, straw sandals. So they could be coming back soon. When you take those off, you touch your feet. And at such, now it says, right, and this is, we're still in the preface here, at such times, if you miss the point, take a light and search hard in the depths of the night. That's interesting that it comes in. If you miss the point of eating when hungry, sleeping when tired, taking off your sandals and putting them on, if we become confused about this human life and this mysterious reality that we live in, if that's not enough, if that isn't satisfying, if we're, you know, if there's some doubt there about this curious human life, and for most of us as Dharma practitioners, it brings us to meditation. There's a little doubt there, or there's some aspiration or even a yearning to realize something deeper, something that's been, or rediscover something that's been covered up or hidden, perhaps. It varies between us, but the prescription here says that at such times, take a light and search hard in the depths of the night. And that's really the life of a Zen practitioner or a Dharma practitioner. You know, you search, you look, you practice meditation, practice awareness, something of a search. There's an inquiry there, there's a looking. Enlightenment means illumination, right? So it's shining the light on, it's shining the light of awareness into the experience of our life. Why are we shining that light? Take that light and search in the depth, it says here, in the depths of the night. It is that way. When you look into the awareness, you look into your own mind in meditation. Right? It's dark in one aspect, and that one aspect of it is just remains irrevocably dark and mysterious. It's this mystery of being that has always been so from when we were the smallest children until the place where we find ourselves now. It's always been this way. And yet there's a mystery there that is never fully brought into knowing. right? So we search, when we practice, we shine that light and we search and we look. How will you meet this? So now we have the student entering the temple and saying to Joshu, please instruct me. It said that when Joshu went out on pilgrimage before he became a teacher, he said, if I find an elderly man older than I who I can teach, I'll teach him. And if I find a small child that I can learn from, I'll learn from them. You know, it says something of his state of mind. It's like, when it's appropriate to teach, teach. When it's appropriate to learn and be a student and learn. Right? So often people, we can become prisoners of our identity, right? Where we have to be taken a certain way. Particularly if we've gained some recognition or some achievements, we have some certificates, or we got something to say that, then maybe our identity becomes that. But that identity is something extra that we carry around, and it isn't always appropriate to use an identity. Sometimes it's better to be completely anonymous. It's like, I'm at a hotel. I'm spending the evening at a hotel this evening, right? Avail myself of some fancy facilities. Then if I came in the hotel and said, my name is Jokai Roshi, and I'm an acknowledged Zen teacher in the Soto lineage. Can I get an upgrade? Good luck with that, right? Nobody cares. In fact, they might start pressing, maybe got well, I don't know if they've got a panic button under the desk. It's but right, that identity, if you carry around that identity, then often these identities, and they're not appropriate in certain spheres of activity. And I know I've met teachers who do have that identity issue. Right, where it's just like you have to be treated as a certain way, or just and carry it around a little too much. If I'm being a little cheeky and arrogant to say that, So Joshu can teach someone who's much older, which is really turning things upside down in Confucian China, where it's like always wisdom is coming from elders. And he can learn something from children, which again is turning it over. Right? So it's like, as we're going through our days, sometimes you have a boss. Sometimes you're not very much not the boss. Right? So if you're ever unfortunate enough to get sort of pulled over by the cops, you're going a little too fast or something. I know this because this happens on Highway 74 to the Zen Center. We've got a lot, sometimes people who are staying at the Zen Center will get a ticket on that stretch because they know to sit there. And because you're slow going up the mountain, and you finally crest out at the top, and everybody's like, woohoo, I can go full speed now. And then they get pulled over. And if you're unlucky enough to get pulled over, it's very clear that you're not in charge at that point, right? So it's like, okay, now I'm the and so can we how do we flow effortlessly between these different identities so that we're much more a person of no identity, right? What Thich Nhat Hanh, he had that book I read many years ago, Being No One, Going Nowhere. That's really a heart of Zen practice, being no one, going nowhere. The wonderful irony is, if you're no one, you can be everyone appropriate to the circumstances. And going nowhere, you can go everywhere and be appropriate to the circumstances. So that brings us to this koan where the monk asks, I've just entered the monastery. I'm here to practice Zen. I want to get enlightened. Or I came along to a meeting, a Dharma meeting, an ICD. I want to know what it's all about. What am I going to, what can I realize here? What will this do for me, perhaps? We come in like that. I've joined the monastery. So we've all done that in one sense. We've all joined the temple at 4:30 today. We joined the practice community. And Joshu says, and he asks for instruction. Like, what do I do? Like, to the great Dharma teacher, if we say, well, you know, we met the Buddha and asked the Buddha, or, you know, we met a famous teacher and asked them, please give me some instruction, you know, help me out here, give me some wonderful teaching. And Joshu says, did you finish your rice gruel? It was a staple meal of the temple environment in those days. I remember when I first came to Yokochi Zen Center, that was still a staple. We'd have rice gruel every other day for breakfast. Right? We don't do that these days. Breakfast is usually make your own. People are, you know, there's all kinds of things in the fridge these days. There's bagels, there's, you know, there's a loaf of Dave's Killer bread, there's some eggs. You know, it's like the decadence is set in at this point. Like, we're off the rice gruel now, right? But there's nourishment in a staple. Maybe your staple's oatmeal. I try to eat oatmeal. I don't really like oatmeal. I have to have a big blob of peanut butter in the middle of it to get it down me, but I know it's good for me, so I'll eat it. Rice gruel's, you know, a good healthy staple. Joshu asks, have you eaten it? And we take it on that level as just being, have you eaten your rice gruel? And the monk says, I finished eating. He's probably not eating like right at the same, you know, so it's kind of a moot point. It's like, yeah, I finished eating. Joshu says, wash your bowls. Then wash your bowls. Like, for we know, in our lives, it's like when we make, say we make dinner at home, say we're making a nice dinner. The meal's not over until we've washed up and put all the dishes away. That's all part of the meal. Right? There may be times where we just like, you know, I'm not feeling it right now. You eat it and you just leave it to soak. That would always be a thing at the Zen Center. We would just say, listen, leaving things to soak that's not a thing. We like clean it up. It's like, because sometimes people would do that. We just put some dishes and so I was just letting it soak. No, we don't do that. The meal's not over until you fully cleaned up. Again, we're back to that appropriate activity and response. Eat your rice gruel. Then what's next? Then wash your bowl. And then what is the next activity? So very practical instruction from Joshu. Right? So then the monk goes off and he's probably thinking, dang, you know, is that it I thought this was a Zen center. I thought this was a famous Zen master I was receiving instruction from, perhaps. But if we take it on the, you know, maybe we look at the deeper level, in Zen and in koans, there's often a surface interpretation and then a deeper interpretation. And the most wonderful aspect is the deep and the shallow match each other. It works on the shallow and it works on the deep. They don't contradict one another. What is the deeper level here? The monk arrives at the practice center, at the sangha, to study Dharma. And Joshu asks, have you eaten your gruel? Have you eaten your rice gruel? Have you practiced? Have you thoroughly practiced? Have you sustained your inquiry? Have you eaten it? And sometimes life is very much it's rice gruel. It's everyday activity where it's not all, you know, sashimi and or whatever else of the finest, you know, like the fancy chocolate or something like that. It's not always fancy. A lot of our activity of our days and what we do, we may sometimes see as being mundane or even boring or something of a slog. Sometimes the workday is that way, it's a slog. But it's all gruel, it's all rice gruel, it's all sustaining. And practice in Dharma practice, again, the discipline of sitting, of showing up to sangha, that's eating rice gruel too. It's like you don't always want to sit. I don't enjoy sitting. Me, doesn't enjoy sitting. Used to, or does here and there when it's in the mood, that I likes it. But me, is often not in the mood. Me is in the mood to be entertained by other things. But I know that if I set me aside and sit, then me is much better taken care of. Me is much better taken care of. Sitting and practicing is it's like taking the parental role to the me self that just wants to run around and trash the room. So we sit, and that sometimes that discipline of day in, day out of a practice in that way is like eating rice. The staple activity. Have you eaten your rice gruel yet? But the monk, perhaps on a deeper level, maybe doesn't take this as so literal. He says, yes, I have. So imagine, we practice for these years. We inquire into Dharma. We gain insight in the way. We come to know something of the non-dual, or something of the deeper container of the root of awareness that we all are. Maybe we encounter some peace. We're able to rest in presence, which is an extraordinary achievement by itself. To be content with things just as they are is a wonderful expression of practice. That is it's quite it's a very rare thing to be satisfied with things just as they are. Just as they are, not contingent on circumstances matching any criteria. So have you reached that point? Perhaps Joshi was asking. Are you satisfied? Are you liberated? Are you at home in the self? Are you present and aware? Are you an awake person? The monk claims yes. When Joshu says, wash that out, wash that bowl, don't let anything stick there. Because if we have some idea there of an attainment or some special state of mind that has been cultivated, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Dharma practitioner, and we start, then that identity starts to build. Other people are this way, but I am this way, or anything starts to come in. It's what Chogyam Trungpa would warn of as spiritual materialism. This Joshu warns about that with this next step. When you've eaten, wash your bowl, wash it up. When you've practiced, when you've realized, wipe that away. Dissolve any position, any idea of attainment or accomplishment. Return to being an ordinary person, which is an extraordinary thing, to be an ordinary person. There's a poem here from what I have here in the book that I'm pulling this from, which is quite touching for me, which is a poem from when Joshu, very near the end of his life. And I've read some of his writings that just extraordinary ordinariness and sense of humility and nothing specialness, which I really appreciate. Okay, so this is great Zen master Joshu, after multi-decade teaching career. This is how he puts his understanding. He says, "The cock crows in the early morning. Sadly, I see as I rise how worn out I am now. I haven't a skirt or a shirt. I just have the resemblance of a robe. My loincloth has no seat, and my pants have no opening. On my head are just 3 or 5 specks of grey ashes. Originally, I intended to practice to help save others. Who would have suspected that instead I would become an idiot? So I love that, you know? What a wonderful accomplishment. But Josh, you can say that at the end. How preposterous. I set out on the Dharma path thinking I would I wanted to save everybody. Who would have suspected instead? But I would become an idiot. But it's not negative. Another Zen teacher, Tozan, says in a writing of his, he says, practice secretly like a fool, like an idiot. In Zen, it's praise, this aspect. Don't be anybody, no need to be anyone special, right? Just an anonymous, ordinary human being with all our foibles, right? All the things we get wrong. Can we laugh at ourselves? Can we forgive ourselves? Can we really irrevocably be ourselves? You know, at the end of his life there, Joshu, he's not holding on to anything at all, just being as he is. And he can say what he says with honesty. Is that enlightenment? Well, you know, that's an enlightenment that I aspire to there. You know, a way to be authentic, to be honest and direct and reveal all of himself in something as simple and straightforward as that. Old man's lament. Yeah. But it's beautiful. Just things as they are. Okay, well, I'd like to open it up if anyone has any question or comment, anything that you'd like to share or ask, please go ahead. Thank you, my friends. Good to see you.